Welcome to another edition of Carnivore Bites. I'm your host, Jeff Sherman, along with Dr. Eric Lopkin. And we're going to start out with the foolish and then move on to the ridiculous. Foolish. John Kerry, which I really don't understand, Dr. Lopkin, how the heck he ever got out of Harvard, but, whatever. What is it? Leonard Nimoy used to host a show, Tales of the Unexpected or Unexplained. He might be on that show. But anyway, the boy genius, the grifter, the cad, basically said that people might have a better feeling about Russia's activity if they reduced their greenhouse emissions. Is there a net somewhere like or a straitjacket that would be available? Just commenting. Go
Yeah,
ahead,
that
Dr. Lopkin.
that is the derangement of the left. They don't care if people are dying. They don't care that Ukraine has been decimated. They don't even care that Russia has been persecuting political enemies and killing political opponents. If
Yes.
they care a little more about climate change. If Russia were to show, oh, it's okay, we're fighting climate change, then the rest of this, to pull a quote from Biden, you know, a limited incursion is fine.
But even the I agree with this. Is it's unbelievable. And even how about the thought process? Like people would say, they're mass murdering. They're all the things you just said, but they are reducing their carbon footprint. Like who even what sane? You're talking about being in a bubble. No sane person would even draw those conclusions. I'm sorry. No one who's actually sane. Am I not correct?
No, it is the bubble. I mean, that's exactly the
Mm-hmm.
right word for it. They have their focus, and anything outside of that focus doesn't matter. They've got blinders on. And it really is a shame because the mainstream media is reinforcing the blinders by kowtowing to the ridiculous demands and not allowing people to talk about what's going on. We've seen in several cases recently, both CNN and MSNBC have to walk back stories because they were manipulating the stories to meet their agenda.
Yes. Oh no, one good example of that was Trump was talking about his wife, and then he looks off stage at Schlapp, I believe her last name is. I'm not sure about her first name, and says, "Yeah, I can see you. Jane Schlapp, whatever her name is, right?" And then what happened? Seth Meyers, was by the way, five people watch that show, and CNN and others saying, "Yeah, he confused Melania's name." No, he didn't. But they twist the story. And I think it's going to get worse, obviously.
Yeah, CNN was just forced to backtrack on a story. Uh, Now I'm forgetting her name. The Republican that gave the State of the Union response.
Yes, yes, I did see that, and I forgot her name as well,
That-
but they had to walk that back.
because yeah, they were telling lies about the story that she had told about a sexual abuse victim, and turned out nothing that CNN had said was actually true. And it was their own reporting that did them in because at the time they had reported on the story correctly. Because at that point, the Me Too movement was in full swing. So sexual abuse was one of their focuses. Now that's apparently fallen by the wayside too.
That's gone, yeah.
Or maybe it's just, if you're a Republican talking about it, then it doesn't matter.
Yes. And it was actually Katie Britt, the
Thank
person
you.
that was doing the response. And yes, but that goes into like CNN is still a bit, well, was a business. They have, that's just because I'm part, they've destroyed themselves. And I'll give you another example. News Nation, basically you watch that, that's what CNN used to be. It's yeah, a little left leaning, I get it, but you can watch it. It's they do both sides. In fact, Cuomo was on it after he's gotten out of the rare air of CNN. Basically, was on saying that yeah, he believes Trump's going to win, no problem. How dumb can you be to just f up CNN. I mean, is it, I really believe it's beyond repair. I mean, how do you turn that around? And by the way, they're selling the building in Atlanta. Did you know that?
Yes, they're abandoning their Atlanta headquarters because
Which is a
George.
synonymous with them.
Right, but
I mean, for
Georgia
CNN.
is way too red for CNN's taste. So they're moving their operations to New York City, which is amazing because they're losing money hand over fist, but they're going to move their operations to what is right now the second most expensive city in the world to do business with, second
That's
only to
why.
San Francisco.
That is why they have some of the brightest minds in their management pool, and it's inexplicable, but it's not my problem. Who cares? But I think it's interesting. What I do care about is the State of the Union. I find it fascinating. A jacked up Joe was on Adderall, or who knows? Maybe Hunter gave him a couple lines, but he was off the hook, animated, rushing through his speech, and he did get a bump. But interesting enough, 24 hours later, no bump. In fact, if you look at independence, which is really what he should be attempting to go after, only 25% of them thought it was positive. Fail.
Yeah, it
Plus,
was.
I think people, after, no, wait, one thing I think actually also, before you go on, sorry, is after people digested it for a bit, they started thinking, well, that was kind of a little unhinged. Your thoughts, Dr. Lopkin?
Yeah, it was a very interesting State of the Union, and I found people's reactions to it very interesting as well. Immediately after the speech, of course, the liberal media went crazy saying, look, he's back. Look, he was
Joe
able to
back,
go
yes.
through the entire speech. But when you took a deeper look, first of all, the speech was only 68 minutes long. To put that in context, his speech last year was 144 minutes. So he's not even capable of doing what he did just a year ago. Then you had a number of psychiatrists and psychologists come out and say the sped up speech, the shouting, all of this was indicative that he was on Adderall. So he was obviously medicated to be able to do that limited performance.
Let me
And
interject one thing as well on that is that after his performance, he took the day off, but over the last couple of days, he's been actually Joe Light. He's been worse. I saw some of his events downright scary. Like, am I allowed to ask a question? It's like, whoa, dude.
well, no, he
So
didn't.
yeah, after all that high, he's crashing.
Yeah, he didn't take the whole next day off. He did have a campaign event where he yelled at the crowd to send him back to Congress.
That's right. I
Be-
thought it was the day after. You're
because
correct. I love that.
because he didn't even know what race he was running in. He also very clearly stated that he put more into the national debt and raised the national debt by more than any president in history, which is true. But that's
But it was a
saying
misread.
right. That's saying the loud part quietly and the quiet part out loud. So
Yeah.
his minimal bump vanished almost immediately. And as you said, he did not have that big a bump with independents, which is the group he needs to convince, because the content of his speech was clearly aimed at shoring up the wacko left base.
No
And
question.
the fact of the matter is, the more he tries to kowtow to that base, the more he's losing not just independents, but the more moderate people in the Democratic Party. And you're starting to see it. We had 14 Congress people call him out, Democratic Congress people call him out for his border policies. You're starting to see the Democratic coalition fall apart because he's focusing on the radical left. In terms of voters, you're starting to see the Jewish population side with Trump because they know he's going to defend Israel, and Biden seems to just be trying to make trouble for Netanyahu.
Correct, but it's not just moving, it's moved. A majority of New York, once liberal Democrats, are now on the Trump side, not on Biden. Thank God. It took too long, but at least they made the move, along with blacks, not a majority of Jews, but blacks and I think Hispanics are close to a majority. Blacks is about 25%. So my question is, Dr. Eric Lopkin, then how could these polls that show a very pretty close race be accurate? I mean, basically, the Republicans are eating the base of the traditional Democratic constituency, the
Well,
bedrock.
you also have to remember that the polls have always swung liberal. This goes back, forever. And we talked about this on terrestrial radio back in 2016, how every poll had Hillary dominating Trump.
Destroying, yes.
And then it turned out that that just wasn't so. So, and these polls, and I actually speak to folks at these polling companies, and they've all admitted that their methodology hasn't changed anything. They haven't done anything to try to adapt. So the polls are still going to swing liberal. The fact that they do swing liberal and it's still that close. And even the ones that have Trump leading, they're still within the margin of error. So the polls are predicting something very close. And the fact of the matter is that almost every presidential race, no matter what the pundits like to say, every presidential race in recent memory, I think the last one that didn't was Bush Dukakis, comes down to a handful of votes in a handful of states. It's always been close going back to Clinton.
Yeah. No, actually, second Clinton, uh, kicked ass on Dole. It wasn't even really close. That was an anomaly, though.
Yes,
But yeah,
yes, you're
what you're
right.
saying is 100% correct. My personal view is that um, I believe Trump's probably truly ahead by 5. That is just my guess. And electorally, he's in good shape because I know Biden just officially lost Georgia by getting the name of the victim wrong and then basically apologizing for using the term illegals, which one of his moronic cabinet members had to walk back. So I think that's pretty much done. Correct.
Yeah, that was a big mistake
Goodbye.
during the State of the Union, was getting Lincoln's name wrong. I mean, calling her Lincoln, that did a lot of damage because it showed he's out of touch with the
He doesn't give a shit.
consequences of his actions. Everybody
And he's
knows
also
at
not a
this
nice
point.
guy.
Well, yeah, but everybody knows at this point that he's lying through his teeth when he says he needs Congress to give him the authority to do something
Wait,
about the
you need to
border.
stop that for a second. Hold on. You have a great point. It needs elaboration. Do you actually think most people know it's bullshit? That's a real question.
Based
I
on the
do.
based on the polls, I do. Border security and immigration keep coming up as the number one issue. And it's a issue that in these same polls, Trump beats Biden in some cases by 15 to 20 points. So, yes, the American people know that Biden is lying about needing Congress to do something. They know he signed 93 executive orders that put us in this position. So, getting the name of a victim wrong, and not just getting the name of a victim wrong, but also almost simultaneously having the gold star father of one of the soldiers that was killed in Afghanistan pulled out of the hole for heckling him and subsequently arrested because he still hasn't said the name of any of the soldiers whose deaths he's responsible for. So that also did not go in his favor.
No, it did not. I humbly believe that we're talking about the same thing, but I do believe that it was a sugar rush in people's minds and in actuality. And I think the more time people had to adjust, and then subsequent to that, the you elect me to Congress and staring off into space and saying, "Can I ask questions?" That plus people rethinking it did not do anything to move the needle. And why is that important? Because he needed to crush it, and he didn't.
But
Sorry,
he
didn't.
needed to crush it, but I think that initial sugar rush, as you called it, was basically because they had set the bar so low, and he did manage to meet the bar minimally, but the bar was
Mhm.
so low that after 24 hours of reflection, people went, yeah, you know what? That didn't actually mean anything.
Well, interesting. Yeah, we talked about the border being number one. We'll get back to the border in a second. No, that's not. Um, Haiti's going down the crapper. They got their leader is like I forgot his name. It's really off the hook. Anyway, there's probably going to be a flood. DeSantis already preparing for it. A flood of Haitian migrants. And Uncle Joe has a decision, and it's a lose lose. And he often finds himself because it's a result of being a moron and putting yourself in that position. He's in a lose lose situation, Dr. Lotfian, isn't he? If he opens up the floodgates for the Haitians, then it just puts more fuel on the fire and might be the straw that breaks the camel's back in terms of 2024 with immigration gone amok. And if he doesn't open up the border, he alienates his base. Don't you think that analysis is correct?
That is correct. I think ultimately he has to alienate the base because the fact of the matter is the same violent gangs that are running rampant in Haiti have also come across the border already. They're here. They are part of the crime wave that we have seen. There's gangs from Haiti, gangs from Venezuela. And
Honduras.
if Honduras, yes. And if you open up and you say, well, you know what? Haitians can come in. Well, that was what he did for Venezuelans. He said, the situation in Venezuela is terrible. We're going to allow all the Venezuelans in. And now we're seeing that the gangs came almost to the exclusion of the people that actually needed help. So
And I'm sure
we
how dumb can you be? But how dumb can you be? Obviously, Venezuela is not our friend. If you don't think they opened up the mental hospitals, the prisons, I have a bridge to sell you. Obviously, happened back in the 80s with Cuba as well. How dumb can you be, Uncle Joe?
Well, again, we've said this over and over. There is a real question as to how aware of what he's doing he is. There is a very
I love.
strong possibility that he does not understand the consequences. I mean, remember, in the Her report, he wasn't even sure what years he was vice president. We just saw in a speech he didn't know what race he was running in. We actually have to ask, does he even know what year it is, or does he still think that the global situation is the same as it was in 1995?
I actually think you have a very good point, as always. Um, I think the Her report I was wrong about that because Trey Gowdy said they shouldn't have had a hearing, but he was wrong and I was wrong. That really did not help Uncle Joe. I don't know if CBS is going to report it, whatever. It's a lose lose. Okay, number one, basically blows up the Trump documents case because how can you not charge one and charge the other? And if you read the transcript, it's shocking. Like I, I've never seen. I know, seriously, I'm not kidding with you. Forget about presidents or what. I've never seen anyone in my family. I've never seen, my ex mother-in-law. She was in a nursing home, and people around there, a lot of them were out of it. She wasn't. But I've never seen. I mean, if you read was I a president? Was I the vice president? What year was that? Real? It It's
Yeah, his
shocking, and I blame the Democratic Party, and I blame his pig wife, and she is a pig, opportunistic pig. That's elder abuse. And if you really love someone, why would you do it? She never really loved the guy. It was all about power. He proposed to her like 6 times. Okay, maybe twice. Okay, maybe even a little jitters. 6 times. You're probably not really into him. Got it? You have to be a psychiatrist to figure that one out.
Yeah, the her report made it very obvious that there were major differences in what Trump did and what Biden did. Trump had documents that he was legally entitled to have. After he left the presidency, he had them at Mar-a-Lago with
Locked up.
Secret Service security plus private security, and within that they were in a locked room. Biden
Do you think?
was
Wait a second. Do you think the case is blown up? I
I
do.
I hope so. I
Well,
think quite frankly, I don't know that they were going to be able to prove anything, even obstruction anyway. Because unlike the cases against Trump in New York, where it's almost impossible to get a fair jury, who would give him a chance. In Florida, it's flipped. I don't think Jack Smith is going to be able to find a jury that's going to believe him.
100% correct, Dr. Eric E. Lopkin, no doubt. And you'll need a unanimous verdict. It's not a civil case. And I think the thing blows up. I mean, again, beginning, I know it's Uncle Joe and he's senile, but you have someone like you just said, lock and keys, Secret Service, all that kind of fun stuff. And then you have a basement. And he didn't even know how he got
Well,
the
it
documents.
wasn't
He
it
didn't know
wasn't even
what they
about the
were.
base it wasn't even about the basement. It was the fact that, first of all, he never had a right to any of these documents.
Yes.
Some of these documents went back to when he was a senator. And again, he had no excuse. Those documents were not allowed to leave the secure room. So the minute he took them, he was breaking the law. Then they were in these boxes, moved from place to place, from house to house, from office to office. He claims he didn't even know they were there. There was no real security on them. And in fact, the best part of that one is there is a box of classified documents that you can clearly see in the garage on an episode of Jay Leno's Garage when he was talking about his car. So, right there, in full view of the American public, there is a television show, not one person from which had security clearance, all walking around these classified documents.
Obviously, he's never been bright. He's dumber now, but how dumb can you be? And the other point is, when he took these documents, he wasn't senile. So therefore, he should be.
Allegedly.
There you go. I like that. Also, let me give you a little thing. Real world. Okay. First of all, we look at, like Carvel said, border. That's huge. But so is the economy. Inflation is not dying. He says it's dying, but it's not ebbing in any way. Last month's inflation report was rising 3.2% on top of like an 18%. And let me give you a little story, a very quick story about Mr. Sherman buying or attempting to buy a car. And I saw a video before I ever did this, and I was going to put it on the docket for the show, that car inventories are piling up. I don't know if not just EVs, but all car inventories. Okay. So Mr. Sherman goes to the Subaru dealer and he's paid his car off. So he thinks, okay, maybe trade to see what I get. It's worth trying, no big deal. So yeah, they do the appraisal of the other car. So anyway, let's get right to the point. My exact car, only 3 years, into the future, so to speak, is now $10,000 more, and my financing rate, which was 1.9%, is now 7.9. It's like welcome to the 1970s. And why I mention that, it's not about me. Obviously, I didn't buy the car. how many other people are going to a dealership and going, I actually said 7.9? I have perfect credit. And they're like, yeah, that's it. 7 point. So my point is, and I like your opinion on this, when it hits home, people don't give a shit. Like we said, when your house is on fire, you don't really give a shit if the fireman's an asshole. And if you're a regular, Joe Lunch Pail guy or gal and you're buying a car and the thing went up $10,000 and your interest rate, which is essentially zero 3 years ago, is now almost 8%, you're thinking, what the F happened? Am I not correct? Plus, let me just say before you go any further, there's a record number of plundering of 401ks for people to make ends meet. That's also not good. My point is when you're doing it or experiencing it, it becomes real. It's CNN can't spin that.
No, they can't. And you are exactly right. The reason that there is such a backlog on car lots is because of the interest rates shooting up. And the interest rates are high because of the record inflation that Bidenomics caused. And
Mm-hmm.
there is, and it's not, and again, it's not just cars. People are seeing this every day, especially with food. There was a fast food receipt that went viral on social media from Five Guys that a bacon cheeseburger, soda, and small fries was $24. And this is because one, food prices have gone up, and two, all of these liberal cities and states pushed up minimum wages, saying, well, things are so expensive, they need to make more money. No, when you raise the minimum wage, that means it costs more to produce the goods. So the costs go up faster. And then in the State of the Union, Biden harped on he wants to raise corporate taxes, which again
Wait,
is
before you go on though about that, which is I want your opinion. Any moron, which he is a part of that group, by the way, would know you raise corporate taxes. They both do both actually. They raise prices and they cut employment. Duh,
exact
duh.
exactly raising corporate taxes is going to push the problem further. And it showed just how out of touch he is, or possibly how ignorant he is on how the economy works, because he finally, late by the way, got a budget to the Congress. And the budget is a over $7 trillion budget. I believe it was 4.5% higher than his current budget. And according to the nonpartisan Office of Management and Budget, this, if they actually pass this, it would add $15 trillion to the national debt. More spending causes more inflation. He is making his own problems worse because he does not understand this.
Well, there's no reason why. First of all, he's mentally deficient. That's one of the reasons. The other reason is he's never really worked. He's been a grifter. He never worked a day in his life. He's been lunch pail Joe. He's never worked a real job. I wouldn't let him. I wouldn't hire him at Jiffy Lube. He'd probably put oil in the transmission place. God, the guy's a moron. So also what we have here is on that on the issue we look at even a place like New York. Trish Reagan was doing a podcast, and basically, when you look at the migrant crisis, the changing fortunes of the bedrock of the liberal constituency of the Jews, blacks, Hispanics, that there's some polls now. It's a long shot. I'm not delusional, but there's some polls that kind of put New York to some degree. It's certainly not solid blue. She floated the idea of maybe having Lee Zeldin as his running mate. Don't think both are going to have it, but this shit show keeps going in. Getting any longer, going on for too much longer, which it's going to do. I think every besides California and Illinois, they're in play. Your thoughts, Doctor Lopkin?
Yeah,
I mean, people can only take so much.
yeah, there are a number of swing states that are now solidly red. There are a
Yes,
number of what used to be solidly blue states that are now swing states. Now, I don't think New York is one of them.
I again, I don't,
I,
but again,
no,
it could. I believe my prediction. You heard it here. I think Biden will win New York by 6 points.
that's very possible. I think where it'll be very interesting are the congressional races in New York because there are a lot of areas in New York that have already turned red. They're not within New York City, which is the bulk of the population and therefore the bulk of the presidential race. But for individual congressional races, that could be interesting. And remember, it was New York Republicans that actually helped flip the seats, flip the
No
Congress
doubt.
in 2022. So it is very possible for the congressional seats to turn red. Again, I don't think it's going to be enough for, to beat Biden in New York, but you're starting to see all of these groups that the Democrats would take for granted are starting to go, wait a minute, you know what? We have been supporting you for years and you have done absolutely nothing for us. And now you're bringing in people that are your chosen people to help and taking resources away from us. In Chicago, the African American community there is furious about the fact that the mayor is taking resources away from the African American community to give them to migrants.
Interesting. You mentioned that there is a black, several black leaders saying that this convention, maybe be careful what you wish for. Having the convention in Chicago may not have been a great idea. It could be 1968 deja vu all over again. You're going to have Palestinian nutcases out there, and you're going to have African Americans and others really just pissed off about the migrant thing. It could really be some bad optics, Dr. Lopkin. And one thing he does not need, he doesn't need any more baggage. None, none, none. Your thoughts?
Yeah, the Palestinian protesters are interesting because they're still out there protesting, and yet the more they protest, the only person they seem to have any effect on is actually Joe Biden. Because Biden is terrified now that he's going to lose Minnesota, he's going to lose Michigan, because both of those states had very large uncommitted votes in the
Yes,
primary.
they did.
These are people that went out and said, you know what? We don't know who we want. There's nobody on the ballot we really like,
But we
but we
don't want
sure is
Uncle
right.
Joe.
We sure don't want you. So he
Yes,
is
and
kowtowing to try to get them. But if you take a look at the polls, the general public is turning against the Palestinians because these protesters keep blocking traffic. The protesters keep blocking people's way to work. In New York City, they finally arrested Palestinian protesters because they were blocking the bomb squad from getting to the scene of a crime.
I would agree with all of that. But I also think, yes, that is absolutely 100% accurate. However, optics are also something that needs to be addressed. When you have, a convention, the Trump convention, Republican convention, everything's hunky dory, and then you have 19. That's one of the reasons Humphrey lost, by the way. I don't know if you knew
Yes.
that. It was a very close election, and Chicago did not help him in any way. And I don't think it's going to it's going to help Uncle Joe in any way, and he doesn't need any more turbulence. So let's just leave it at that. And speaking of his relationship with the Palestinians and the Israelis, a lot of talk in his administration that he's trying to put pressure to get rid of Netanyahu. That really actually hunkers back to Obama, the number one Israeli hater.
Yeah, Biden, right after the State of the Union, was caught on a hot mic saying that he told Netanyahu that they were going to have a come to Jesus moment. And I loved Netanyahu's response to this the next day because he said, you know, even though Jesus was born not far from here, I don't know what that means. But the fact of the matter is, Netanyahu is responsible to the Israeli people, not to Joe Biden, not to the people of the world, not even to American Jews. He is there to represent the Israeli people. And the Israeli people are lockstep in the fact that Hamas has to go. They know full well if they stop before Hamas is gone, it's just going to happen again. And Netanyahu used the perfect example. He said, in World War II, the Americans would not have gone into Germany and then said, all right, you know what? We've done enough. We can leave Berlin alone.
Of course not. Yes, but it also gets to the bigger point is because his policies have no strategy, have no thought behind him, he's consistently put himself in of something I've never seen before. I'm talking about presidentially, even not so great presidents. He's put himself in a lose lose scenario. If he sides with the Palestinians, he loses a lot of regular people support, so to speak, average people out there. And if he helps the Israelis too much, then his nutcase wing is gone, and he needs everyone he needs. So I think once again, when you have not not well thought out policies, when your policies are awful and you're a moron, you put yourself in a lose lose, which he is consistently at right now in his presidency. With the Haitians, lose lose. With the Midi situation, lose lose. But speaking of lose lose, what do you think, Dr. Lopkin, with the Fannie Willis and the Georgia case charges being dropped?
Yeah,
Is that gig over?
the judge dropped 6 of the charges against Trump, saying Fannie Willis named crimes but did not actually show any evidence that these crimes occurred.
That's
So he
shocking.
yeah, so he threw them out. He still has to make a decision as to whether she can stay on the case. But the fact that he admonished her for the charges tells me he already doesn't think she's capable of doing this. There's obviously at least some indication that he has doubts about this case. So I think he may pull her off. I don't think the judge actually has the authority to force them to drop the case, but
No, but it goes to a different district. It's a whole new
right,
ballgame.
I think he will pull Fanny from the case.
And
In
then you have
which
a new
case,
set of
again,
eyes looking at it.
it
It
has
could,
to
yeah.
go it has to go to another jurisdiction in that case. That other jurisdiction isn't going to be assigned the case. They actually have to volunteer to take it. And I don't know that they're going to find anyone at this point that wants to stick their head in the lion's mouth.
Well said, as always. Um, Kind of like getting to a little of the peculiar things in our docket here. RFK is a report that's eyeing Aaron Rodgers as a running mate. Yikes.
Yeah,
We'll just leave it. It's not even worth. That's
well, no,
that's
it is
stupid.
it is worth talking about because Aaron Rodgers wasn't the only person on his list. He also named Jesse Ventura. So
A genius, yes.
I mean, this gives you an idea of who RFK is looking at. Honestly, I think releasing those names shot him in the foot. I think he has just
100%.
I think he has just minimized the impact he is going to have on the 2024 election.
Without a doubt,
There
because he
will be
also had, he
people,
always had a little bit of the nutcase fringe to him. This just puts further weight on it.
there will be people that can't stand Trump, can't stand Biden, so they want a protest vote. And they may vote for Kennedy knowing that he won't win now. But the idea that he's going to be able to make an impact just went out the window.
Check, please. What do you think of TikTok, the move to have force them to sell?
Yeah,
Chucky Schumer might
that
not bring that to the Senate, but I think he has to.
yeah, the House voted today on a resolution to either ban TikTok or force them to disengage from the Chinese Communist Party. And it's one or the other. The preference is for them to disengage from the party. And in fact, Kevin O'Leary from Shark Tank has already come forward and said if they are willing to disengage from the party, he will buy the party's shares in ByteDance.
Yes.
So there is an audience for this, and that would keep TikTok running. If they refuse and they stay tied to the Chinese Communist Party, then they will be banned. They will not be able to have their app on any of the app stores from Apple, Google, anyone else. And that is a big deal because it passed the House with 335 votes. This is an overwhelmingly bipartisan result.
Chucky has to bring it.
Yeah, prior to that vote, Chuck Schumer was saying he doesn't know if he's even going to bother bringing it to the Senate. Now, Joe Biden has already said he will sign this if it gets to his desk, which I think is going to put pressure on Schumer because this is a matter of national security. This is a
No,
matter
wait, I
of
need to interject something. I got all that. Is Chuck Schumer increasingly going into the asshole category? Oh, he's a political hack.
shoot. Again, I have known Chuck Schumer personally, going back to when he was my state assembly person in Brooklyn. And he used to work with my mother, who was president of the Parents Association at the school. And I have said over and over again that State Assemblyman Schumer would be horrified at what Senator Schumer has become. Schumer will not bring to the floor anything that any Republican is in favor of. He has become such a partisan hack. But with such an overwhelmingly bipartisan result in the House, and Joe Biden saying he will sign this, I'm hoping the Democrats are going to put enough pressure on him that he has to say, yes, we will put this up for a vote.
Don't see how he doesn't. On a more lighter note, we have the fourth lowest rated Oscars. Jimmy Kimmel, the boy genius, hosting it, feeding right into Trump's hands. By the way, by reading his tweet, I thought that was excellent. Um, to me, I actually remember when I was a kid, I used to stay up and watch the Oscars. I could I'd rather watch the Yule log. How does that sound? See some
Well,
entitled, out of touch idiots glad having themselves. You have Robert De Niro, who's basically he needs to be checked into a mental
yeah,
hospital. It's got no attraction. These people have no connection to anyone that's in the regular kind of person. They're elitist pigs, and no one wants to watch their shit. And on top of it, the host Jimmy Kimmel is about as funny as a heart attack.
yeah, I like that you mentioned that you used to stay up late to watch it.
I did.
And most of us did at one time. But I don't know if you noticed or not, but this year they started the ceremony an hour earlier because nobody has been staying up late enough to watch who wins Best Picture and the big awards at the end, because it's just not worth it anymore. The
No one gives a
ratings have
shit.
the ratings have been terrible for the past, I'd say, at least 8 years. It's been a political shit show where these folks, who, quite frankly, most of which couldn't form a thought unless it's written in a script in front of them, are spouting about their political beliefs, which, again, the American public doesn't care about. And
Look,
more,
I have to interject one thing about that, which I thought is really funny. Howard Stern, which I think has gone the deep edge, he's a moron now. But I remember I was listening to his show. It dovetails exactly what you're talking about, Dr. Lopkin. That's why I interjected. He goes, it's really, it was kind of a funny. I'm not probably going to do it justice, but you see an actor, Bill Smith or Nancy Johnson, and they play a nuclear physicist or a brain surgeon, and people think, well, and then when you actually get them off script and you ask them the simply, they're dumber than rocks. It's hysterical.
yes, I
They're
was a
morons.
I've been a journalist for a long time. I've interviewed a lot of actors. And yes, some of them are capable of putting together some really deep thoughts and having interesting conversations. And on the other end of the spectrum, I have interviewed actors and actresses who could not string three words together if it's not on a script in front of them for them to read. And that's another problem. And I think it actually, part of this actually goes back to game shows. If you take a look at game shows now, the game shows are really inadequate. Back in the 60s, the 70s, if you were an actor, you actually had to appear on a lot of these quiz shows. You had to show some knowledge. You had to be able to answer questions and show other talents other than reading a script. And that's no longer the case. So when you're choosing a host, you don't have the same caliber of actors anymore. You don't have younger actors that are as talented as Robert De Niro was in the 70s. I mean, now he's lost it, but back then he actually had talent. So you end up with Jimmy Kimmel, who's not in the same class that Billy Crystal was when he hosted, when Johnny Carson was when he hosted, but even more, for the past 9 years or so since Trump went down that escalator, he's been making fun of Trump nonstop. And when Trump turns the tables and makes fun of him, he turns into a whiny little bitch, and he
A
can't
bitch.
handle
Thank
the
you. 100%.
criticism.
What a whiny little bitch. That's absolutely correct. Hysterical. And he played right into Trump's the one who won the night, not Jimmy Dickless Kimmel. Anyway, another great show, Dr. Eric E. Lopkin, and we're doing well. The whole sister network, our show in particular, we're on the ascend, unlike Uncle Joe, aren't we?
We are, and you can participate. Let us know what you think. Tell us your opinions. Tell us about the issues that you want us to talk about. You can get a hold of us at the Carnivore Radio Facebook page. You can also go to xvadio.com/connect. Send us a message and let us know what you're thinking about. And of course, you can catch every episode of Carnivore Bites at xvadio.com, the Carnivore Radio website, the Apple Podcasts app, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Audible, Amazon Music, and other platforms that respect freedom of speech.
I thank you, Dr. Lopkin. Another great show, and I'll see you next week.
We'll see you then.